US service members deployed near Iran have reportedly faced food shortages, raising concerns over conditions at sea. Despite a massive defense budget, questions have been raised about supply chains supporting US troops in conflict zones. Images of meals described as dry patties and processed food have fueled concerns over troop welfare. Sailors have reportedly said fresh food was unavailable, with no immediate port stops expected during deployment. As these concerns emerged, the US continued military operations and deployments linked to the broader Iran conflict. Amid ongoing Middle East deployments, concerns have emerged over food conditions aboard US Navy vessels operating in the region. A Marine aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln reportedly shared images of a meal showing small portions and processed food items. The tray was described as including boiled vegetables, a dry meat patty, and a grey processed meat slab, according to reports. Similar complaints have also emerged from sailors aboard the USS Tripoli, citing limited food supplies during deployment. Service members told families that food was being rationed and fresh produce was not available on board ships. Sailors messaged relatives saying crew members ate when possible and shared available food equally on board. Mariners also warned that onboard supplies were running low and no port visits were expected in the near term. Families responded by preparing care packages containing food, hygiene products, and basic comfort items for troops. The boxes included snacks, vitamins, socks, toothpaste, and sweets intended to support deployed service members. However, many shipments were delayed after mail delivery was suspended across multiple overseas military zip codes. The US Postal Service had suspended deliveries to 27 military zip codes amid ongoing conflict, according to reports. Officials said the suspension was caused by airspace closures and logistical disruptions in active conflict zones. Mail already in transit was held securely in storage facilities, awaiting further delivery authorization. Authorities stated there was no fixed timeline for resuming postal services to deployed military personnel. Despite a Pentagon budget nearing $1 trillion, families have questioned welfare conditions for deployed personnel at sea. Military officials said such disruptions were common during wartime operations and global deployments. The military did not provide clarity on when mail services or supply chains would fully resume operations. The situation has highlighted growing strain on deployed naval forces operating across the Middle East region. Families continued waiting as delayed packages remained stuck between home and service members overseas. Amid reported concerns over food shortages, the United States has continued deploying additional troops to the Middle East region. Amid Iran's claim that hundreds of US troops have resigned over the war, fresh reports are emerging of a large-scale military reinforcement into the Middle East instead. The United States is expected to deploy thousands of additional troops to the Middle East in the coming days, according to a Washington Post report on the buildup. This deployment signals a sharp escalation in US military posture just before the fragile US-Iran ceasefire is due to expire on April 22. Officials told the Washington Post that the new movement will include roughly 10,000 soldiers arriving by the end of April, boosting the regional force level. The majority of this force is said to be aboard the aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush, which is currently en route to the Middle East. That carrier group alone carries approximately 6,000 personnel, which will significantly bolster US naval strength once it reaches operating zones near Iran. Another major addition is the Boxer Amphibious Ready Group, which is scheduled to arrive by the end of April with about 4,200 troops. This group includes more than 800 Marines along with helicopters and landing craft designed for rapid deployment near coastal areas and islands. Once these reinforcements arrive, the US will have 3 carrier strike groups operating around the region at the same time. These include the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford, both of which are already involved in the broader military campaign. The expanded military presence is reportedly tied to President Trump's maritime blockade imposed on Iranian shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, officials say the White House is also preparing detailed contingency plans in case diplomacy with Tehran collapses. According to the Washington Post, these plans include potential limited ground operations using special forces units inside Iranian territory. Such scenarios are said to focus on securing Iran's existing uranium stockpiles and conducting landings on key islands near the Strait of Hormuz rather than a full-scale invasion. IRGC intelligence said on April 14 that frustration and hopelessness are spreading among U.S. troops in the region, presenting the claim as a sign that repeated Iranian attacks have taken a psychological toll on American forces. The IRGC attributed that alleged drop in morale to Iran's repeated missile and drone strikes on U.S. military bases across the Gulf, arguing that the sustained attacks have disrupted both confidence and battlefield readiness. Iran International reported that the IRGC made this revelation on the basis of what it described as assessments and field data, giving the claim the appearance of an intelligence-backed internal reading of U.S. conditions. Iran's IRGC intelligence said, and I quote, "Despair and frustration are taking a heavy toll on U.S. forces in the region. Intelligence assessments and some field reports on the condition of U.S. forces in the region suggest that a deep and significant sense of frustration and hopelessness has set in among them. According to these reports, several factors are driving that mood: the repeated and effective strikes by Iranian missiles and drones on military bases, officials in Washington brushing aside field reports and on-the-ground data, constant redeployments, living under unstable conditions, and repeated changes in plans ordered by the President and the Defense Secretary. In just the first month of the war, around 734 resignation or discharge requests were reportedly submitted from bases in 3 Persian Gulf countries. Field assessments indicate that the situation appears to be much the same in other countries across the region. These departures span every level, from senior commanders to the lowest ranks. At the same time, senior military commanders say that under orders from the Defense Secretary, the loss of soldiers is not considered a red line. What matters most is preventing commanders and troops from being taken captive." Unquote.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.